we can definitely get into also the story there of the journey from Nexus Prisma 1 to Nexus Prisma 2. It's still under the 0 point something or another semver, so they're not formally like this 1, 2. But certainly from a community standpoint, there's kind of been an older version and now there's a rewrite.
What are the biggest differences there?
So the rewrite, we've started, I want to say, it was actually this year, probably in February. And the differences and why the rewrite happened were centered around how the first version of Nexus Prisma is actually an amazing story because when Prisma Day came around, I think it was the 2019 Prisma Day, Flavien, who's an engineer at Prisma, was at the time an intern. At the time, Nexus Prisma, he put together kind of also a rewrite of its API in like 1 week or something. And it's like this like big tornado of code and this amazing thing popped out and users loved it. And it allowed, in particular, for developers to automate the CRUD aspects in the API, right? So if you had wanted to create, update, delete, paginate, this kind of thing was being taken care of for you. And it really was like a pretty, I think for a lot of users, a very clear velocity win. But it also, I think, it moved so fast and kind of grew an adoption so quickly that sort of the finer points of, well, what happens on like day 2, day 3, I kind of need a bit of customization. I don't want this field to be, I don't want the password to be part of the, the create in the API. So like details kind of became important at a certain point, right? So if you're doing like your day 1, you're just getting something off the ground, it's fine. But it did sort of bring up a lot of questions around the API design. And there was always like a conflict around, is Nexus Prisma the tool you use for your first few weeks to kind of build a prototype and then you kind of move off it? Or is it something that we want to kind of evolve the API to kind of grow with your project to any scale? And it didn't help that, so there's like these very kind of existential, complicated API questions. And then the other aspect was that Nexus Prisma at the time and to this day has never been like, a sole product focus, right? It was always kind of like a side aspect. And so some of these like API questions were pretty tough to crack, first of all, but second of all, didn't necessarily have all the time that was needed to crack them. And the code base was like, the people were forgetting why certain aspects were built the way they were. It was built quickly. Test coverage was there, but it wasn't as good as we wanted. And so when we came to round finally to this year, early in the winter, we kind of looked at it and we said, let's do something more modest and a little bit more slower and stable and just focus on quality and take some of the learnings from the first version and put that into sort of a new effort. And so I've been the main developer on the new one since then. And we've left CRUD, which was one of the big attractive features of the first Nexus Prisma. We've left that off the table for now, and it's something we'll be interested to tackle in the future. But what we've done for now is to just really get projection of models really like tight and stable and simple and flexible. So what that means is, when it comes to mutations or queries, well, particularly mutations, when it comes to writing those, right now, the new Nexus Prisma doesn't really help you do that. On the other hand, the new API is really simple and really flexible to sort of, I think it's worth pointing out that, and we got this feedback when at first users were a little bit like nervous about this change. They said, the first one's cool. Can't you just kind of keep making that work? And then they'd be like, well, should I get off it or should I wait? And we sort of have put the first one off of maintenance. So you can't really stay with it if you want to stay up to date with Prisma. So then some users were starting to say, okay, well, like how bad kind of quote unquote is just vanilla Nexus with vanilla Prisma, right? Like how far can I just get with that? And it turned out a lot of users were actually pretty happy. Like it's actually also good. And that's been, I think, interesting to see where Nexus Prisma, as kind of cool as it is, and we use it right on the Prisma data platform, I think it's not a panacea. And like you can, I think, kind of prematurely like optimize toward it and just say, oh, it's going to solve all my problems. And then you kind of rely on it almost too much. And so that's because the type safety you get out of Prisma, which is very type safe at the data layer, and then Nexus is very type safe at the API layer. Like those work so well together. And then what I want, kind of how I see the new Nexus Prisma is just like a cherry on top that takes already what's working well together and just kind of makes it a little bit easier and a little bit better. And so the way that it's a little bit easier and a little bit better is that it's actually now sort of statically generated code, whereas the previous version was a Nexus plugin. and it was sort of more dynamic and at runtime. The new Nexus Prisma is kind of like Prisma Client, right? It's like it shows up in your Prisma schema file, shows up as a generator. You run Prisma generate, it spits out sort of static code that then gets read by, or it spits out generated code that gets kind of integrated with the static code. There's like a small sort of static piece of runtime that's also shipping in Nexus Prisma. And so this is very similar to how Prisma Client works. And then as a user, you basically import, say, like, let's say you have a user model in your Prisma schema. Well, now you can import from Nexus Prisma a user, and then user can just be used to fill out the fields on a user object in Nexus. So basically, we were generating Nexus config statically of what you've defined based on your Prisma schema. We include resolvers for relationships between, say, like a user and its comments or something like that. But let's say you want everything from a user object model. So you want to like project like the ID, you want to project the name and the email, but then you want to add some more fields. You still have your Nexus object definition, and you're just basically taking the static code and you're just using that to automate the implementation. And it's a little bit verbose in the sense that you still have like these line by lines, right? But at the end of the day, like what we found on Prisma Data Platform is the API is like, what's really important is just how stable it is, but like actually writing, like we don't write objects like every day, it's not changing, right? There's something about the API. It's more important for us to just have it be reliable, be flexible. If we need to get around a limitation of Nexus Prisma, we don't want it to get in the way, basically. So to the extent that it helps, that's great. But we never want it to be like, oh, I have to work around Nexus Prisma now, which was often the case for the previous version. So the new one it's really important to us that it's always able to layer on top benefit, but never ever be like in the way of you just shipping the exact API that you want.